All right, now that I've unmuted myself, welcome everyone to the late edition of the Weekend Wrap this week. Lots to talk about. The Crows gallant in defeat, but whether that actually means anything is another thing. So instead of crapping on about it, let's get right into it. Good evening and welcome to everyone who's joined us on the Weekend Wrap on this late edition, 8 o'clock because of the stupid Western Australian time. But nevertheless, not a bad result for the Crows, even though we didn't get the chocolates. Joining me tonight, well, first of all, in the absence of Nikki, because she's a little bit crook, I've got someone else who's a little bit crook. Macca, how you going?
Yeah, no, we'll soldier on, mate.
Oh,
bit croaky, but we'll soldier on.
Wow. That doesn't sound good at all, mate. Oh, how long you had that for?
This is day 5.
Day 5. Goodness me. That's horrific. Never mind. Look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube and on Discord. We had a great Discord chat going on today, which was really good to see. So hopefully we have a good Discord chat tonight as well. And welcome to everyone who also is working with us on Twitch. Don't forget, if you want to support the cast, you go to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. But Macca, before you conk out, I reckon... Before you conk out, I reckon we might have to just get you to do your beloved Macca.
Yeah, mate.
All right, let's get
up already.
Let's get right into it, mate. Give us the stats. Give us the. Hang on, what am I even bloody talking about here? Hang on a minute. Right, so. There we go, and let's give it a bit of a... I don't know what's going on here. Right. Oh, Mac, what am I doing?
I don't know, mate.
I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Let's go. There we go. Oh, shit, it's all fun and games here today. All right, Macca.
Yeah, mate.
Cats by 21 points on Friday night. 10 goals, 868 to St Kilda. 5 goals, 1747. A margin of 21 points. I thought it was a boring game of footy.
Very good summary. The Saints blew their chances. They had, in the first quarter, probably 7 or 8 shots that should have been goals, and they kicked points. And they ended up losing by 21. And, they say that bad shot kicking for goal is bad footy, and so it proved to be. Saints, they fought on very well, but, as I said, they blew their chances. Duncan and Guthrie were outstanding as mid for Geelong. Brad Crouch, he got 28 touches fiend, and some of them actually went to a teammate, but he did end up with a fractured cheekbone for his effort.
Yeah, he did. That's not good for Bradley. That'll keep him out for a couple, I'd imagine. But it wasn't a bad game by Brad, and it wasn't a bad game by St Kilda. They just didn't convert, so... bad kicking is bad footy, as we all know, mate. So,
Brad says he's playing next week, so we'll see.
Well, that'll be interesting. We had Sydney getting up over Collingwood 10-12-72. Sydney to Collingwood 5-12-42, a margin there of 30 points. The Collie Wobbles are continuing.
Yeah, I have to say, I hate to say you're right, Fiend, but I've looked through the Sydney side and you are right. They're not an inexperienced side at all. They've got a lot of experienced players, and they've got good experienced players in the right spots, which is one of the reasons why they're going so well. On the other side, the coin, Collingwood, I thought they were absolutely pathetic. They were a very ordinary side. De Goey is possibly the most overrated player in the AFL. He's getting big money for doing absolutely bugger all. And if I was Collingwood, I would definitely trade him. No doubt about that.
Well, he's the one that they banked everything on. Like, he's the one that they got rid of Treloar and got rid of bloody Stevenson and all the rest of it. De Goey's the fat cat with all the coin at Collingwood at the moment, apart from Grundy, of course.
Well, I think the Grundy's he's played all right, but he's not playing as well as he was before he got his great big fat contract either. I think he's a little bit of a satisfied fat cat now, and they've got an ordinary midfield, and Buckley's got to be in great strife. He really does.
Well, I think that whole club has needed a refresh from the Maguire era, and Buckley's a big part of that Maguire era. I mean, Buckley was a beneficiary of the succession plan, and whether Buckley can coach or not is another question entirely. I just think the club itself needs a refresh. I saw during the week that Jeff Brown is thinking about making a run for the presidency because the current guy is just essentially Eddie's right-hand man. So I think there's a lot to go on, or a lot to play out at Collingwood over the next 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, I saw a suggestion in the chat there that, it might be worth approaching, trying to get Grundy and take his contract on with Collingwood playing part of it, because if they go for a total rebuild, because Rob O'Brien at the moment is going very, very bad. Very, very bad.
Well, I think it was Adelaide's offer to Grundy in the first place that made Collingwood blink and offer him that astronomical salary. I don't know, Mac. I don't know. We've got a couple of other fish to fry at the moment. Ruck is a problem, but I don't know whether we need to pull the trigger on that one just yet. But if they if they shop him around, we'd certainly be silly not to be in the hunt. We had North Melbourne getting up over Hawthorn. I think it was PJ Crows in the chat said the tanking begins. North 13,987, doing a worse job than Hawthorn of losing. Hawthorn 12,880. So Hawthorn winning that game by losing North by 7 points. What a debacle! Yeah.
I saw glimpses of that, and Hawthorn are terrible. They really are. And, I mean, they are... Is Clarkson up for a rebuild, or does he piss off to another club? Because at the moment, he has got a very, very ordinary team, and they'll end up challenging North Melbourne for that bottom spot if they play like that every week. They were very, very ordinary. And, I heard Clarkson talking about his team as if... And... he was talking as if it has still got some upside in it. Well, I just can't see it. And as for North Melbourne, well, they may well have played themselves out of any chance of getting that priority pick that they were just spouting around. They probably weren't going to get it anyhow.
That's not going to happen, no.
But I think that North Melbourne, they're doing a rebuild and they're on the right track.
Yeah, look, we spoke briefly about the Clarkson situation last week, didn't we? And I got a sneaking suspicion, speaking about Collingwood, that if Buckley does get the ask, Clarkson will be number one on their list. Absolutely number one on their shopping list, I would imagine.
Well, he'd be number one on a lot of shopping lists, and if they're going to replace Buckley, why wouldn't they go for him? Quite right.
Yeah. All right, the Lions absolutely belting the Suns in the Q Clash at 19-10-124 to Gold Coast 7-9-51. The Lions there by 73 points. It wasn't even a contest.
No, all I can say about Gold Coast is they continue to be the AFL money evaporator. They've costed the AFL a fortune, and it was a pathetic effort against Brisbane. Absolutely, it was just a training run for the Lions. And I can see Gold Coast getting pulled. They'll definitely get pulled apart in the next 2 years. Players aren't going to hang around while they play like that when they're going to get very good offers from clubs that are playing well. So I can see big rage on Gold Coast in the next 2 years.
Well, and if you talk about, Adelaide making plays for certain people, you've got a couple of good South Aussie lads in that team. That might be a few more opportunities.
Possibly making the same plays too. The King. They'll be trying to reunite the King brothers, for example.
It's. I think the days. I think Gold Coast days are numbered. Every sport that's tried to stick a team in that bloody part of the world fails. Even rugby teams fail at bloody Gold Coast. So I don't know. Anyway,
I've said many times that they should close them down and open up a team in Tassie in their place.
Yep. The Tigers getting up in a very tight squeeze, coming from nowhere to beat Giants 13-9-87 to 12-11-83, a margin there of 4 points to Richmond.
The Giants look like winning it all day, Fiend. All day. Their midfield was outstanding. Taranto on top, Hopper, Young Green. They've got quality midfield. They were on top, and of course that's the area in which Richmond at the moment have got a lot of injuries, and it just seemed inevitable that it was going to be a GWS win. But about the 12-minute mark of the last quarter, they made the same mistake last week. They went on the defensive about 7 minutes to go last week.
Yeah.
And I thought they did with about 10 to 12 this week. They started kicking the ball around and wasting time, and instead of going on with the things that were putting them in front.
Yep.
And Martin proved his class, and once again, I think GWS blew it. And there was that arsey pounce right at the end, went straight to Rioli in between two GWS players, and the footy god said, well, stuff you GWS, you play it around, we'll give it to Rioli. He can kick the winning goal.
Yep. Not sure. I mean, I've never been sold on Cameron's coaching, and this, as you say, going defensive with about half an hour to go in the game seems a little bit silly to me. But
you
anyway,
don't do it.
No, you can't do it, especially
mate.
against a team that's going to keep coming like Tigers.
Yep, and they paid the price for it. And there's two wins they've thrown down the drain.
Yep. The Power, Macca, probably made my weekend. The Power going down to the Bulldogs in a game that probably tells us more about Port than it does about the Bulldogs. The Dogs 15-6-96 to Port 12-5-77, a margin there of 19 points. And are the Power pretenders, Mac?
They're pretenders against the top teams because they don't have the same quality midfield. Admittedly, they do have Butters out at the moment. They have Dersmer out at the moment. But I still don't think they're quite at the level of the big boys. And the Bulldogs midfield is probably as good a midfield as I've ever seen in the last 20, 30 years. It's an outstanding midfield. And the game started off, the Bulldogs winning, I think it was about the first 6 or 7 clearances, ending up in goals. And that's where the game was won and lost, actually, because I thought Port, as they do, they slogged away and with their home crowd dressed in their other ridiculous jumper, urging them on. And, and they tried pretty hard. I thought Wines came good, but no. They're just, I think it's just a little bit below the very, very top teams, and I think we're safe. I don't think that they will win the flag. My question to you is, where was Kenny going? Was he going boot scooting after the game or something with that bloody shirt with that fancy stuff on his shoulders?
Look, I think it's pretty hard to work out what's going on in Ken Hinckley's mind at the best of times, Mac.
Somebody said heritage shirt.
Yeah, I know.
I couldn't look. Why was he wearing that ridiculous bloody shirt?
I don't bloody know. Look, I don't think the Port Power did themselves any favours against the Dogs. They didn't stand up in the midfield. When the Doggies have got the luxury of having Bontempelli basically play forward, back and mid because of the depth in their midfield. I noticed someone in the chat said Bontempelli for the Brownlow. I tell you what, it's going to give it a shake if it keeps going like that. He is playing Rolls-Royce footy at the moment. And the Dogs looking good. Whether the Dogs can stand up under finals, well, they can. Whether the Dogs can score enough goals against better defensive units, I think, is probably my only question at the moment. But they're a bit like Richmond in that they can just pile it on with their run and carry and their hustle and bustle and Just whether they've got enough class up forward to kick a winning score in a finals game, Mac. That's probably my only question.
Yeah, I think they can kick the score. When I look at them in a game, I think that their weakness is actually in defence. That they've got when you've got a 5'2" midget as your best player in defence, and he does use the ball very well. Good teams aren't going to allow that to happen very easily. And Alex Keith is their marking man in defence, and I don't think he's firing as well as when he was playing with us.
No, I thought he did. They're asking him to do more, Mac. They're asking him to play key defence. I thought he did it right against Charlie. I mean, Charlie took a couple, but I didn't think Keith's game was that bad, to be honest. I just don't think he's got enough mates.
No, but he's supposed to be a support player, not the player, and that's where I think that's where their weakness is going to be found out.
Yeah,
if they have a weakness.
But they recruited him. They recruited him to be a key position defender, Mac. And if you notice, he's bulked up a lot, and he consistently plays against it. Whether he's good enough, which is what you're essentially saying, that's a good question. But I still think they're one short. Anyway, let's move on. What else do we have here? We had Essendon 10-8-68 over the Dockers 8-13-61 in a fairly ugly game. 7 points to the Bombers. They just keep nipping around.
Yeah, not much to add to that really, Fiend. It was, the ball seesawed back and forward, and I don't really know what more to say about it. The fact is that Fife and Brayshaw, they were pretty good in the midfield for Freo, and Essendon had a couple of good reads of the ball, just as you say, kept rocketing backwards and forwards. Freo missed some very easy shots for goal, which probably cost them a win, or possibly a chance for a win anyhow. But I think, somebody 90 says rubbish quality game, both sides a long way off, and it's very hard to add very much to that, really.
Talking about Gold Coast, we have to have a similar conversation about Fremantle, because yes, they had a couple of years where they were contending, but aside from that, they've been shit for pretty much their entire existence, haven't they? And they're shit at the moment, and you just wonder how they can get themselves into being a legitimate football club, because at the moment, at least Port are around the mark. Love them or hate them, at least they're around the mark. Fremantle, aside from 2 seasons, they've been in the competition, a few years longer than Port. They haven't even looked like it. Like, you'd think the AFL is starting to run out of patience with that club. Yeah,
but as the guys are saying in the chat, at least Freo make money, mate, and we as the Gold Coast just bleed us dry. And
I'm not talking about financially. I'm just talking about in terms of
but the interesting
keeping their supporters engaged. If they continue to be shit like that, then they won't be making money forever.
Well, they've got a job to do. They've got to rebuild, because what was the name of their coach before? What was his name?
Ross Lyon.
He was at Ross Lyon. Ross Lyon is a club wrecker. When he was at St Kilda, he wrecked St Kilda. He left them in tatters, and they had to totally rebuild. And at Fremantle, he went there because they were going okay, and he gradually wrecked their list as well. He actually is a list wrecker, and he left their club in tatters. And now Dustin Longmire, he's got the
He's not a development coach.
He's got Ross Lyon, no, I think he's a destroyer. He leads clubs in tatters.
Yeah, but you don't, it's been shown that you don't employ Ross Lyon to develop a list. You employ Ross Lyon to try and win a flag. And the jury's out on whether he's capable of doing that. He had a pretty good crack at it at St Kilda, and he had some sort of a crack at it at the Dockers, both falling short. Some would say because of his style of play, his game plan. But you certainly wouldn't. I mean, if I was Collingwood, I wouldn't be employing Ross Lyon, because he's not got enough to work with. He hasn't got the patience, I don't think. But if you're Fremantle at the moment, as a supporter, you'd be thinking, what do we have to do to actually start being a legitimate, consistent football team, like, say, as Sydney Swans, who are always around the mark? They've got to start getting this right, Fremantle, because at the moment they are being absolutely shaded by West Coast, and those supporters won't hang around forever. You'll go through a generation or two, and those supporters will drop off because the kids go for winning teams.
Yeah, well, you raise a good point, and it's up to them to. I think Freo will eventually turn it around. It's going to take them time as well. But look, I agree with you. It's on long way to do it. And I think he was appointed exactly for that reason, because a senior club, a really senior coach, probably wouldn't go there because they are a struggling team. But no, I think he'll eventually get there. It's just a matter of they've drafted pretty well so far since he's been there, and I think they will. I don't know about becoming a premiership team or anything like that, but at least I think they'll become a competitive team again eventually.
Well, they need to. All right, speaking of becoming competitive, Melbourne continue on their merry way. 13-16-94, 26-point comfortable winners over Carlton, 10-8-68. Didn't see this one.
Didn't see much of it because of our game. Only saw little bits early on in that. And there's a big difference in class between the two teams. And when are Carlton ever going to become a good side team? Ever?
Well... Oh, not with this list. Not with this list, Macca. There's too many holes. You talk about club records. Steve Silvani destroyed that list. And they've made some inexplicable decisions with regards to their list management. And, can David T coach? Well, has he got the cattle? I'm not sure. But... gee whiz, for a club with so much history. But, here's the thing, Mac. You talk about the Victorian clubs and their history and all the rest of it, as Tommy Gunn's just gone bang in the chat. Carlton and Collingwood at the moment, two of the most storied clubs in the VFL, don't even look close at the moment. They don't even look near it. And you'd think to yourself, as a Carlton or a Collingwood fan, when is it going to come? Because I can't see it for either of those clubs at the moment.
No, and I think you said it right at the beginning. Silvani absolutely destroyed their list. Probably one of the worst list managers of all time, and he's just kept them in the same state where they need to rebuild. I mean, fans, and I'm not putting this one on Silvani because that may not have been his, but paying $800 for Zach Williams, he's a half-back flanker. They paid him $800 to become a midfielder. He didn't succeed, so he's playing as a half-back now. So
never going to be a midfielder. Never going to be a midfielder, mate. And the same goes for what's the other lad's name? Ahmed Saad. I mean, they paid a fair bit for him as well, and that was a bloody waste of time. I mean, Saad's a good player, but is he the bloke that you're bringing in when you're actually trying to get the club back on its on track? I don't know.
Never.
I don't think so. Anyway, let's look at the ladder. We've got the D's and the Dogs, or the D's on top, still undefeated. We've got the Bulldogs in second. Geelong, Brisbane and Port and Sydney on 24 points, along with the Wiggles. And Richmond on 20 inside the 8. GWS on 16. That loss hurt them in terms of trying to get into the 8. Fremantle also on 16, as well as St Kilda. We've got Essendon, Carlton and Gold Coast, along with us on 12 points. Collingwood on 8, with Hawthorn and North Melbourne finally getting on the scoreboard with 4 points. We're still 2 games ahead of North, so we've got a couple more games to lose, Macca.
We'll work on it, mate. We'll work on it. Can I just say something about Melbourne? And historically, 5 times in their history, they've won their first 9 games. And each time they've ended up winning the premiership. So if history's anything to go by, yep, they're the favourite for the flag.
Well, there you go. It's interesting. I didn't know that. Well, like you were saying the other day, the 8's almost set. I mean, GWS are probably, to me, the only team that look like, as I mentioned last week, look like they can sneak in. But I can't see anyone else. And Sydney just keep hanging around. And Sydney's percentage now is looking a lot healthier. So GWS may not get a chance, Mako.
No, that might be their problem because I think Sydney probably might be playing well enough to keep them out. I think you're right. They're the only team that look like they could be a possibility to make it, but they keep blowing it themselves. So if they miss out, it is their fault. And Sydney keep squeaking in. So, and I must say, I've always loved the club ethos of Sydney. That they're a team that are always around the place and they always have a hard crack at it. So they're a club I always love their club ethos.
Yeah, well, that was really born in the Paul Roos era, and he was a man's man. So yeah, I guess it's good that they've been able to carry that on. It's one thing that I was kind of hoping that would be able to carry on with the Phil Walsh era. That whole elite standards and all that sort of stuff. But sadly we weren't able to do so. But never mind. Now we've got a ton of people in chat, Mac. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 in the live audience there, mate. So if any of you guys want to have your say, please stick up your virtual hand. You just click the little button. Oh, we got someone here, and it's our old favourite, Mr. 1990 Crow. I might even let you have a chat. 1990, come in and say g'day.
How are we doing, Mako, Phoenix?
Well, struggling, mate. What are you going to tell us?
I just made a couple of points, I guess, basically for tonight's game, and also a couple of key, news that's going on with the club. So first one was I just want to start with say, like, our rebuild currently, it was definitely unintended. We sort of had that bad list management that sort of led to us going down the course we're currently going, which is the correct one. But it sort of led to us having a whole heap of use that today, I think, was the first time that I really got excited, particularly at halftime. You look at Schoenberg, Jones, Foggerty, Philthorpe, Scholl and Hamill. They were the most exciting part of today's game. And you could all see that each of them showed more than they had for quite a bit this year in particular.
Yeah, we had 11 players under 20 games, mate.
Yeah, so obviously our list is not quite where it needs to be in terms of games played, and that's where we're at. But you can't just pick a group and expect them to have the quality and to work out. You need to pick the right guys. So I'm pretty glad that we've got the guys that we've got going forward. So even if we're losing between 5 and 10 goals, I can still get quite excited each week watching these guys.
Who in particular do you like out of the young ones that we've got there that you can see going on to be perhaps 100 to 200 players? I was going to say apart from Phil Thorpe.
He's going to play 300 games to kick 600-700 goals.
Jesus, let's hope.
Blinking. Schoenberg, I know Phoenix is quite big on Schoenberg. I think I said it on Big Footy. Once he gets to 50, 70 games, has a big tank, adds a bit of muscle and loses the puppy fat that he's got, he's going to be an absolute star.
He's building nicely.
He's just got that innate ability that you can't teach. It's that intensity at the contest. It's the quick thinking. It's the good skills. Just got a good all-round game that you can. Obviously, we'll need to add players around him, but he's going to be a good player for sure.
100%. 1990.
He's good, yeah.
Just the other thing was with the structure we're currently going with, the second key defender. I'm not quite sure what we're doing, whether it's incompetence, arrogance, or are we actually tanking?
Well, don't steal my thunder on this one. Don't steal my thunder on this one, 1990.
Are we keen on Jason Horn?
We will be having a big crack about selection shortly.
I'll skip that one. Next one is Riley O'Brien. I know Mac has sort of mentioned that there's a bit of a big problem. I don't have an issue with playing him at the moment because we're not contending, and it's all about getting the games into the kids. But our list really needs an understudy to really not just to push Rob to play to his level and have a bit of people behind pushing him, but in terms of talent, we need someone who we think is going to be able to play against the best when we finally do get back into finals contention. I know Rob was our best and fairest last year, but I really think that was down to the quality of our list last year and overall performance, and not necessarily talent. And I think he's been found out a little bit this year. I think opposition coaches are putting a bit more time into him, particularly Ruckman. And his main key strength is obviously second efforts, repeat efforts. When the ball hits the ground, it becomes an extra midfielder, similar to Brodie Grundy, I suppose, but nowhere near the talent. So they take away that second effort, and you're really left with a player that doesn't really have a lot, to be honest.
He got killed on the deck by Nick Nat. He got killed on the deck by Nick Nat today.
Yeah.
Nick Nat
taught him a lesson. Nick Nat's not normally a ground forward player. He's a ruck.
Yep. Very good points, 1990.
One more, sorry, just last one.
No, go for it.
Sorry, last one. During the week, there was a big push for priority picks.
Yep.
Particularly for North Melbourne. I'd like to see the club come out and sort of maybe push back a bit on the AFL, because number one, why didn't we get one last year? There was big talk in the media that we were the worst side in 30 years and lost 13 games straight, and it took 8 rounds for North Melbourne to get called for one. I would really like to see someone from within the club come out and question that narrative before it gets too far.
100%. 1990. Everyone in the chat can drink up. Macca, you wouldn't have heard, but on Tuesday night, Macca, I apologise for 100% because I say it quite regularly. Look, I don't disagree with you at all.
See you, mate.
Thanks, 1990. If anyone else wants to have a chat while we're going through the show, you don't have to wait for a pause. Just stick your hand up and you'll be more than welcome to contribute to this show, as you are to all our Crowcast shows, Macca. Let's move on, shall we, to our game. It's a nice little segue from PJ there, so let's move on. And it was Adelaide 11-10-76, going down in the end by 30 points to the West Coast Eagles, 16-10, 106, 30 points there. Initial thoughts, Macca? Just initial thoughts, broad brush, broad strokes.
In broad terms, very broad terms, I thought our effort was very good. It seemed to flag towards the end of quarters just a little bit. I thought that we were let down in our usage of the ball at times, and some of the times, and a lot of the times, it was our very experienced players who did that. And I think, with better usage of the ball, I think we could have got very, very close indeed, Fane. I thought our effort was good enough. It just was our usage of the ball mainly.
Agreed. My initial thoughts were that you couldn't ask more of the 22 players that went on the deck. I thought they were all, without exception, actually, I thought they all tried. Even guys like Shane McAdam, whose effort has been a little bit questionable over the last couple of weeks, tried very hard defensively. I don't want to push forward too quickly, but I think we lost it at the table. I think we lost it on Thursday night, or when the selection was finalised, Mac.
I have to agree.
I think it was a structural issue that cost us the game, or cost us a reasonable chance of winning the game. And again, I guess you've got to think to yourself, all right, well, what's the coaching panel trying to achieve at the moment? Are wins the priority, or are we using this season to run various setups and focus on various things? PJ Crows in the game day chat put forward some hypothesis about, maybe really focusing on team defence this week. So it's hard to know. I mean, if you're talking about selection to win a game, they cocked it up. But maybe that's just not their focus at the moment.
Yeah, we were definitely we're tall short in the backlines, and I just thought that the matchups we had against their key players were very poor, I thought. And then again, when we go forward, one thing you would not do is bomb the ball forward, and we did quite a bit of that as well, because they have some aerial freaks in their backlines.
Yeah. I mean, it was very weird, the way we set up. It was just very weird, Mac. It didn't make a hell of a lot of sense. And so you can only think to yourself, well, there's an ulterior motive here. There's another reason, because the way we set up certainly wasn't to win the match. You couldn't. No one could argue that.
I'm in the same camp as you, 100%. But I just didn't like this. Oh, okay. I've got a glass of water. I will in a minute. No, but in all seriousness, I didn't like the selection, and I couldn't see us winning with the way that we matched up against them.
No, it was never going to happen.
The boys tried their guts out. There's no doubt.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt about it, Macca.
Another thing I'd like to say in fairness to the boys, and not blaming the umpires totally, but I mean, like the goal they got at the end of the third quarter, massive push in the back, one of the biggest I've ever seen, and it's allowed to play on, they get a goal. At times we didn't appear to have a neck or a back, and that's what I think. Home crowd.
Yeah, but I didn't actually think we got too bad a run from the umpires, Mac. To be honest with you, I thought they were right.
No, not.
I thought they were inconsistent, but I don't.
Here and there, that's all.
Yeah, I think they were inconsistent, but I think the umpiring in general has been inconsistent for the majority of the season and for the majority of my bloody life, to be honest with you. So I'm probably asking a bit much for consistency at this ripe old age. Oh, shit. Anyway, let's have a look at selection, Mac, because as I said, I felt like that's where the game was lost. Whoops, what am I doing here? There we go. I couldn't work it out. We always looked like we were too short in defence. For the life of me, I don't know why we didn't pick Murray to come in and take care of Jack Darling. Peter J, who joins us on Tuesday night, made a point in the chat, and I don't disagree with him. Are we doing a disservice to Tom Duday's career? It seems like we're robbing Peter and paying Paul double at the moment with Tommy Duday, because we're asking him to play, outsized. So not only is he ineffective in that defensive role, but we're losing all his creativity and his third man up work. It just does not make any sense to me, that particular selection philosophy at the moment.
Yeah, and I think you're quite right about the Duday thing. He's been... Duday's a very good footballer, but he's been asked to do jobs in the last couple of games that are really beyond him, in the sense of giving away inches, where his role is be playing on a guy roughly his own size, maybe a slightly smaller, perhaps, and then just float across and take the ball, mark the ball. But he's not playing. He's not being asked to play that role. He's being asked to play the wrong role, and it's not good for his career. I agree with you.
Yeah, Death is coming in the chat. Poses a question: how many A graders do you think we currently have on our list in our next premiership? His thoughts are that they're three or four midfielders away still, as well as a key forward. I don't think Well, first of all, the salary cap makes it very difficult to have a complete list of A graders. If you look back at our last premiership winning side, and I know it was years ago, different regime and all the rest of it, but you'd never call Shane Allen an A grader. You'd never call James Tyson an A grader. You probably wouldn't even call Brett James an A grader. Chad Rintoul, those sort of blokes. You need role players, and what Blighty did very well was to be able to put blokes in positions to get the best out of them. Now, Matthew Nicks goes on about players showing their weapons, and this is the issue that I have with the Duday treatment at the moment, in that we're not actually allowing him to show us his weapons. Now, whether that's by design, whether there's a bigger picture that we're not privy to or can't see from the outside, I'm not sure. But in terms of Tom's own performance, we're not enabling him to show us his weapons. Look, I think we're clearly a couple of midfielders away. There's no doubt about that. Because Sloaney hasn't got much time left, and I thought he got given a bit of a bath today by what's his name? The extra long player. Can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Sloaney got smashed until the last quarter.
Tim Kelly.
He got a couple. Yeah, he got a couple of touches in the last quarter, but pretty ordinary from Sloaney.
Yep. We've got a couple of ball carriers that I wouldn't class as A graders. Seedsman is far too inconsistent. He had a shocker today, I thought.
His usage of the ball was a disgrace today.
Yeah, I've been telling you for a while. There's good seed and bad seed, and we saw a lot of bad seed today. Ruck could be a bit of a concern. With Jake Kelly, you wouldn't call an A grader, and I thought he was very, very one-dimensional today. So, Page in Motion, to answer your question, I think we're probably two really A-grade midfielders away, a solid centre-half forward away, but I don't think the list is as far away as what many people think, and I think what we're seeing at the moment is just lack of games, lack of experience. So these kids are, 20 games into AFL careers, and in some cases, we're asking them to do a lot. I mean, how many times did we see Lockie Scholl on bloody Jack Darling today, for God's sake, The other selection that I didn't like was the retention of David McKay, because once again, Mac, we wanted to bring Chase Jones in to try and free up Brodie Smith a little bit, I would imagine. But what it meant is that instead of dropping DMAC, which would have been the obvious, we actually retained DMAC and pushed Paul Seedsman out of position. Paul Seedsman...
Yeah, that was bad, that was bad.
Paul Seedsman's racked up more mileage in the last month than, a trip around Australia. He's averaging, 800 metres gained or whatever. And we push him a little bit further forward, and we lose all that drive in transition. Now, we can lament the failings of Seed as much as we like, but we lost a lot of drive off half-back, and our transition as a consequence at times was very laboured because Seedsman was playing further in front of the ball. Why did we play David McKay? The obvious would have been a straight in and out Chase Jones, David McKay, and we probably could have afforded to not have McPherson on the ground, and as a medical sub. I don't know why McPherson played as a medical sub. He's been out of form for a month. I mean, he didn't get any time on the ground, but that's not the point. And why didn't we have a second key, Murray, or why didn't we debut Josh Worrell? So just a few really odd calls, in my opinion, Mac, that seem to point to a bigger picture that we can't see.
Well, you're suggesting that perhaps winning is not necessarily the priority at the moment, development of players is.
Well, I mean, we touched on it a few weeks ago, and, I think the committee has got 50% of an eye on squad management and list development. But I've just got to say, I mean, David McKay's been a stalwart of the club, and occasionally he does good things and all the rest of it. But he's not bloody offering us anything. He doesn't offer us experience. He doesn't offer us toughness over the ball. He's turned the ball over a lot over the last couple of weeks. He was completely ineffective today, and I just don't see the value in having him in the team. I just don't. There's just no value in having him in the team.
Well, the biggest problem really was the fact that Seidman's been close to our best player for the last 2 weeks, and turned him into a pretty useless player by moving him out of the position. And that I think is really, that is the main problem with the whole structure. Now, if you think about that they're going to leave Siege where he's succeeding, which they should have, then they've got to work out, if we bring Chase Jones in, well, you are right. We'll obviously have to say it's D-Mac flank. So it is a pretty simple thing. Make D-Mac the sub, if you like. So in case somebody gets hurt, he comes on again. But I think that was a poor selection, and the lack of Murray down back was another very poor selection.
Yep. So my personal view is that we lost it at selection, Mac. It was lost at selection. I don't feel like we gained anything. And the problem that I've got with that, Mac, is that you're asking for players for effort during the game, and happy for anyone in the chat to stick their hand up to come on and have their opinion on this. But you ask for players' effort during the match, and if the players, surely as a player, I know if I was a player, I would have thought, well, it doesn't. I can run my guts out today. We're not going to win because all they've got to do is put it up in the air, up forward, and we're outgunned. And that's essentially what it boiled down to. I think I counted 5 goals that were as a direct result of a mismatch caused by selection. You know, Jack Darling, for example, I mean, 3 of his 5 goals were just complete mismatches. Selection definitely cost us an opportunity to win the game, in my opinion.
I think even Ken Higley would have picked that there, Pete.
Well, you know, I don't like to compare myself to Ken because he's a bit of a guru, but... oh, never mind.
No, it was very obvious. It really stuck out like dog's balls. It did.
It certainly did, mate. It certainly did. Let's have a look at some of the head-to-heads, shall we? Disposals 389 to 372 in West Coast's favour. 241 kicks to 201. How well did they transition the ball? It seemed to me, Mac, that what they were doing was, or what we were doing was essentially just getting behind the ball and more or less it was probably it was a real breakdown in structure, in my opinion, because in an effort to cover the mismatches, we just got behind the ball and we allowed them to chip their way up the ground, which they did very well by foot. And then that just put a lot of pressure on us as they went into forward 50. I mean, they had 241 kicks, 148 handballs. We had 201 kicks and 171 handballs. Clearly, we were trying to outrun them and exploit their height up forward and their, perhaps bloody slowness. But it didn't work out that way, did it?
No, I thought at times when we actually had periods where we got on top. And we seemed to then have players in the right spot, but then we'd make an error, and all of a sudden we were out of structure, and we really had trouble restructuring once we lost possession of the ball, and that's where this is where we've got 11 or 12 players that run under 20 games. They've got a very hardened, experienced side out there, and they just. When we made those errors, they really exploited it because they know where to run to once the ball's turned over, and that's where we got caught out badly.
Yeah. Now, interestingly, we had more inside 50s than they did, 56 to 48, and again, it just shows how ineffective we were in terms of moving the ball forward. The structure was all wrong, despite having more of the ball inside 50, we only went in at 41% efficiency, 23 shots from 56 inside 50s. West Coast 27 shots from 48 inside 50s. Disposal efficiency was pretty similar. Free kicks pretty much similar. In the stoppages, Mac, we had we saw Riley O'Brien getting destroyed there, 41 hit-outs to 20. Clearances overall 32 to 30. Centre clearances were even. That was pretty skewed in the first quarter, but we did tidy that up after quarter time, which was good. Stoppage clearances 19 to 17. So around the ground, around the ball, in the cold face, I thought we did quite well. And that shows in contested stats as well. Contested possessions, we won that 143 to 132. Uncontested, though, 256 to 229 just shows that we had trouble getting the ball back once West Coast had it in their possession. We turned it over a bit too much too, 70 to 75 in their favour. Looking at where the game was played, very much in our back half, Mac, and on the wing. Not a lot of possessions up forward. In fact, let's have a look at our we only had for the game 55. I hate it when it does that. 55 possessions in our forward 50 for the match, Mac.
It's not a lot.
It's not a lot, is it? First quarter we had 10. Second quarter we had 20. Which is when I thought that was our best quarter, our second quarter. Third quarter 14 and last quarter 11. So, we're not getting enough value for 50s at the moment, inside 50s.
No, but I think we do have to be a little bit realistic and recognise the fact that we are a side that's rebuilding, and with so many young players in there. As I said, I thought at the start of each quarter, I thought we exerted pressure and good pressure, and we were very competitive, and we got caught out at the end of each quarter. It'd be interesting to see how many goals West Coast got, say, in the last third of each quarter, for example.
Yep.
Mac, that's
all well and good to say, yes, we're inexperienced, all the rest of it. But what we're here to do is analyse the game that was in front of us. And what we're lacking at the moment is effective forward 50 entries. Now, it's everyone on the chat would be weeping because obviously being a late Sunday game, I haven't had time to do my usual forward 50 analysis, Mac, together with stunning graphics. However,
they're crying, mate. They're crying.
Oh, look, it's just I've had so many requests, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but even just from memory, there were times where we would clear the ball out of the centre, and there would be an uncontested Eagles mark, and that mark would be taken exactly where Frampton should have been. Now I don't know because we don't get down the ground views on the footy coverage very often during general play, but I don't understand why we didn't have someone at 40 metres out at centre bounces. Like, that's just where the centre half forward bloody is, isn't it? And for them to play to take uncontested marks after we've cleared the ball out of the middle, I just don't understand how that happens.
Well, most of our clearances too are basically clearances under pressure too. Lairdy and Ben Keys, they were probably they probably cleared the majority of our balls out of centre, and most of them were under pressure, so they're not really haven't got an opportunity to, not like Kelly streaming down the centre of the ground and just picking out somebody to put it on their chest. So you're quite right. Knowing that the ball's going to come in a bit like that, then we should have people where the ball's likely to go.
Yeah, well, that stuck out to me anyway. Speaking of marks, let's have a look. We got absolutely destroyed, Mac. 127 to 82, obviously because they were kicking the ball more. 18 marks to 13 inside 50, contested marks 18 to 16, not so bad. So that stat is clearly just indicative of the fact that the West Coast used the ball by foot predominantly. In terms of contested situations, we weren't too bad. There's a little bit of a disparity in terms of marks inside 50, but that was enough to give Jack Darling 5 goals, basically. Look, I think, effort-wise, it was there. I mean, you have a look at those defensive stats, tackles, 49 to 47, so we're pretty round the mark. Tackles inside 50, 8 to 3. Now, I will say this, Mac, that tackle inside 50 number probably backs up my own personal thought that West Coast were cruising a little bit. Just playing that millionaire footy a little bit that sometimes the Crows of old are prone to play when they're playing a game that they know they're going to win.
Yeah, they did a little bit of Leary stuff, but most of the time, they were guilty of it at times. Isn't it? That's true. But when they put their noses down and got serious, they do it pretty well.
Yeah, just there. I just thought at times they looked like they were just cruising along. So, 40 to 51 percenters there shows that we're around the mark. So, look, it wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible by any means at all. Not terrible at all. We had a lot of the play. There was a lot of good stuff. There was some fantastic efforts the boys put in, and I think that shows in the scoreboard. I think we lost structure a bit, trying to cover the holes in defence. Our transition was scrappy, and as a consequence, particularly after half time, our forward 50 entries dropped off in terms of their effectiveness. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that. Just one point though, when you look at the total result, and I agree with you with what you just said, a 30-point loss. Even when we were a good side and had good players, and we go cross over to Perth, would not be surprised to have a 30-point loss. We've gone over there with this patchwork quilt of a side with all these young boys in there, and lost by 30 points. So I think we have to walk away and say that we didn't win, but it was a bloody good effort.
Well, and I think I need to be clear about my thoughts on that because I don't disagree with you at all there, Mac. What I'm doing is looking at the game as it was presented to us, and looking at the areas that we fell down. In the context of where we sit compared to where West Coast sit, absolutely great effort, lots of positive signs, etc., etc. But we can only present the game that was put in front of us, Mac, and those were the things that I saw that I felt like we need to work on.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair enough too.
Look, let's have a look at some individuals, and of course, anyone who's on in the live live studio audience at the moment. If you want to have your say and have an opinion, as 1990 did earlier on, please go ahead and stick your hand up. I know some of you have alternative views, and it would be great to hear them because we're not always right, Mac. I know it's hard to believe.
Oh no, I'm not buying
always
that, mate.
right.
I'm not buying that.
Well, I've been told. I've been told by certain people that we're not always right.
All right. Sometimes we're not.
My two ex-wives.
Oh, you got two ex-wives? I've only got one.
I'm a bloody optimist, mate.
Where have I failed?
Anyway, that's probably more personal information than I should have divulged. Right, let's have a look at some individual stats, shall we? We had who do you think was your best, Mac?
Oh, it stuck out like dog's balls again. Lairdy, easily.
Right. You really think so?
Oh, I didn't have a contender for second.
Didn't have a contender for second?
No, I mean, nobody contending with him for the number one spot. There, obviously, somebody was second, but I thought Laird was so far ahead of the rest. I thought Smith was probably next. I thought he played a pretty good game. Ben Keys, I thought he played a pretty good game.
Mm.
And I thought there was a couple others played useful games.
Right.
No, what do you think? I mean,
oh no, look, I'm just being a bit silly. I thought Laird was good. I thought Sloan was average.
Ordinary.
Yeah. I thought Foggerty showed promise in the first half but faded. Looked like he might have been injured. I thought Geordie Butts tried really hard on Kennedy.
You can't stop that delivery.
No, well, you can't. You can't. But I thought Jordan Butts is going to be a 250 game defensive stalwart for us. There's no doubt about it. So I thought he was pretty good. Let's have a look at some of these individuals. Let's have a look at Lairdy first of all. 36 disposals, 16 kicks, 20 handballs, 6 marks, 5 tackles, and a goal. That's a fair game, isn't it?
That's his first goal for this year, anyhow. Lairdy? It was a very good game.
Oh, there you go.
Yep, first goal for the year.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know what I'm doing at the moment, Mac. I'm trying to do something here, and it's just not bloody working. Never mind. Yeah, no, look, I thought he was really good, to be honest with you. He was in and under. He got a lot of the ball. Used it okay, probably the best he's used it for a while. We're always going to have our bits to say about Rory, but I felt he was pretty good. Here we go. That's what I was trying to bloody do.
Talk about Lairdy now. He's so courageous. I mean, he goes where angels fear to tread. He gets smashed, he gets hit, but he still gets the ball and he gets it out.
Yeah. Look, he was consistent throughout the game. His disposals. He had, what's that, about 8 in the first. Well, we can tell here. It'll tell us here. Let's have a look. He had 8 disposals in the first, 11 disposals in the second, 6 and 5, 9 in the third, and 8 in the last. So, I mean, if you have a look at the graph on the right and then have a look at the Telstra tracker, you can see that. Let me just try and get that happening. You can see that he did a fair amount of work in the back half, Mac. In that first quarter, so he was working really hard to get back. Had 3 of his 8 possessions in the back half. In the second quarter, it was more in the middle, so we're getting more value out of what he was doing in the middle. Third quarter, again, all in the middle of the ground. So there was a particular focus after quarter time, I think, to get Lairdy to actually get more value for his disposals. In the last quarter, again, predominantly in the middle of the ground. So a pretty good effort from Rory. He's having a nice little patch of form, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, he's in top form, and he's 100%. It just gives everything he's got.
Yeah, in terms of his clearances, let's have a look here, see if I can find them on the graph. So really stepped it up in terms of his clearance work. Let me just find his numbers here, clearances. So he had 10 clearances for the game, 6 centre clearances, 4 stoppage clearances. And you can see in the graph there his clearance work. If I can just find, let me have a look, centre clearances and stoppage clearances. Yeah, so you can see that, he did a fair bit of work in that second and third quarter, Mac, in writing what was a fair disparity in clearances in the first quarter. He worked really hard to get that back on track after quarter time.
Yeah, well, Kelly was doing the damage there early in the piece and at various stages during the game as well, but I think Kelly was at his best in the first quarter.
Yep, very, very true. In terms of his ball use, he had 17 contested possessions and 20 uncontested possessions, 5 turnovers, but 4 intercepts as well. So, that's not a bad. Let's see where he got those as well. Let's have a look. Contested possessions. So yeah, he had you can see with the graph, Mac, that he had a real purple patch from about midway through the second quarter, all the way through until the end of the third quarter. He was very, very effective, tailed off a little bit in the last quarter in terms of his input, but that period halfway through the second to the end of the third probably mirrors where I felt we were most in the game.
Well, it's incredible. Our best player. We have all these first round picks that don't really fire on that, but Laird was a rookie player.
Yes, he was, Mac. I don't know whether anyone's ever said that before. Now, Brent, you had your hand up earlier, so if you want to have something to say, stick your hand up, mate, and I'll chuck you in. Right, so let's have a look at someone else. Let's have a look at Mr. Keys. Now, he ended up with 32 touches, Mr. Keys. But for a while there, I thought he was looking a little quiet. Is that it? So he had 32 touches, 16 kicks, 16 handballs, 5 marks, 3 tackles. Again, probably more forward of the ball than what we're used to from Keys. 53% forward of centre, but didn't. That a couple of times he just doesn't use it, does he, Mac? Sometimes.
Well, he's only got a left foot, and even his left foot is probably about 50-50. And his right foot, if he has to kick it out, that's an anywhere job. And it would be nice if he could develop his kicking. His ability to get the ball is just indisputable. And I think the 1990 Crows is saying exactly what I'm about to say. That you'll never question how hard he'll go at the ball. It's just he has to improve his disposal because he does turn it over a lot.
It's not so much that he turns it over. It's just that he doesn't get value for his possessions, I don't reckon, Mac. That's, I think, where he's got to work a little bit harder. That's right. It'll go to a dispute, or it'll go to a 50-50, or it'll, just go nowhere. But if you have a look at his clearance work there on the graph, again, and that reflects what I was saying, because in the first quarter, if we go down here to his clearances, and he had, that's not bloody right. According to the AFL, he only had 3 clearances, 1 centre and 2 stoppage. But according to me, he had 6 clearances, Macca. So I'm going to trust myself against bloody the AFL site, because the AFL site's been bloody wrong quite a bit. He had 2 centre clearances, according to me, and 4 stoppage clearances. But again, all of his work after quarter time, he had no clearances whatsoever in the first quarter and a bit, and then started to work a little bit harder around stoppage. But probably, I think, was a bit outgunned for the day in terms of his stoppage work. And given his lack of effectiveness with ball in hand, Macca, we do need him to be farming that ball out, don't we? So if he's not getting his hands on the agate at the coalface, that's probably what led me to think that his game, despite his disposal count, was probably not as great as what it has been previously.
Well, he did get around the mid, between the wing and half forward. He was getting the ball quite a bit there, but again, not using it particularly well, and sort of just either to a contest or to the opposition, and that's his one weakness. But I love his effort every week.
Well, that's what I was saying. What we need from him is clearance work. That's what he's in the team for, Mac.
Yep.
And so if we're only getting where's this bloody contested possession stats? If we're only getting 3 or 4 clearances out of him, I know why this is wrong, because I've got it on the fourth quarter. We'll go back. There we go. That's better. So 11 contested possessions, 21 uncontested possessions. So far more outside than what we used to, and that reflects what you were saying, Mac. That he did get a little bit of the ball across wing and sort of half forward. You can see there on the graph to the right that the orange line being uncontested possessions. Far more work. He didn't have a contested possession in the first quarter, Mac. We were playing him a little bit more on the outside. If he's going to play on the outside, and that probably reflects the limitations in our midfield at the moment, because we obviously had O'Connor playing inside. We had Sloan arguably running with Kelly, so that was almost an inside role. You know, who did we really have running on the outside in the midfield? It was
and that is our major weakness. We just don't have that player. We really don't. We don't have that outside jet.
Yep. But look, you know, we still got an honest effort from Ben. Didn't turn it over according to the stats. Took 5 uncontested marks, so he was getting on the end of it. And you can see there, those pressure acts, that's very low, 17 for him. And those metres gained, 525, is quite high from him. Ben Keys had a different role to play today. It was obvious from the stats and also just from looking at the game. Oh, look who we've got here, Macca. Look who we've got here. We've got the king of YouTube. Scorpus, how you going, mate?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, mate. How you going?
I'm not sure how this stage thing is supposed to work. I think I just joined myself. Is that...
Did you?
I don't think that's how it's supposed to work.
No. You know how you joined yourself is because you're an esteemed Crowcast member and you've got bloody podcasters' rights, and podcasters can just jump straight on. Whereas all the other plebs that you see in the channel there, they've got to be invited. You see.
See, I wanted to be invited because I thought that might be a bit of fun, but it turns out I've just added myself. So, whoops. Anyway, I haven't actually been listening to...
I've just chucked Tim out because how dare he? And now I'm going to invite him back in, which is what he wanted. Come in, Tim. Look who it is. It's Scorpus.
Oh, awesome. Nice.
Scorpus.
Hey, how's it going?
You need to do this. If you ever need me to teach you how to do YouTube, mate, for your little YouTube channel with Discord stage, live studio shit, just hit me up.
It is honestly something I've never used before, so I will have to take you up on that lesson. But as I said, I haven't actually been listening to the cast up until now. I saw you guys were live. I'm not often super free, so I usually listen on the replay. But yeah, thought I'd have a bit of fun.
Very good.
And what are you going to tell us, Scorpus?
What do you want me to say?
Did you miss my rant on selection? So you can have your crack on selection if you like.
No, I see some people have already said you've probably said most of this stuff on selection, so I'm not going to rehash the super obvious stuff about defenders and all that. PJ Crows wants to know what I think of McKay. It's like, I don't know. I've probably said enough about that over the years. I was pretty positive on the game overall, I think. I mean, obviously we lost. Obviously there's issues at selection, but I think some players showed some stuff. Chase Jones, I'd gone off him big time after seeing him spud it up even at the SNFL level, but I think he's the big takeaway. You know, he maybe didn't use the ball as well as he probably could, but overall I was pretty impressed with him.
He certainly looked like he could play this time, whereas the move back in the SNFL back into the back line to see the ball coming at him has obviously done him the world of good.
Yeah, I think so.
Why don't we take the opportunity just to look at Chase while you're here, Scorpus? So he had 19 touches, 12 and 7, took a mark. As you can see there from his heat map, a lot of the ball in the back half, as you'd expect, because he's playing centre-half back. A lot of uncontested possessions after half-time. So he was really... and it was noticeable to me that he was actually starting to get involved in transition, which was obviously what we want from Chase. We want to use his pace and his straight line speed, and he started to utilise that a little bit more as the game wore on. So I was really positive as well with his game. Scorpus, I thought it was a real good sign, and a sign that I think the club got it right in terms of identifying where he might be of most use to the team.
I think he's one of those players where it makes sense to compromise the structure in some ways just to see what these players have got. Obviously, we kept DMAC in the team, and ideally, if you were structuring the team to, for example, have defenders, then maybe you would, have Jones in. McKay wouldn't be in the side. You pick a defender. But if you're choosing to play McKay and you want to see what Jones has got, then these are the sort of things that I think has to be done in a rebuild. We've seen previously similar things happen up forward when we've tried playing, Himmelberg, Tex, Thilthorpe, and Foggerty all in the same team. Probably not the best situation, but if you want to see what these players have got, then at times that's sort of the reality. So I'd love to see potentially something like Worrell come in, find a way to do something similar with him, but unfortunately, we haven't managed to do that yet.
Yeah. And again, looking at Chase Jones's metres gain number, you can see that his contribution, he gained us 200 metres in that period from halfway through the second quarter until sort of midway through the third. And that coincided with us really looking as if we were in the game at that point, and also the work from Laird and Keys as well. So you could see that the stats really point to our transition working best through that middle portion of the game. And I got to say, just watching the coverage, it just looked like we got a bit gassed after a while because there was a lot of defensive running going on with our midfielders.
Yeah, I agree. I'll leave you to dictate how this is going to run because I've just jumped in. I don't know what you've been talking about. So keep going with your regular cast. I know you've got a structure to keep to, so don't let me interrupt too much.
Oh. It's music to my ears. Macca, were you listening? Like, Scorpus was talking about structure and format.
Well, yes, I was listening.
No, actually, it's fine, Scorpus. We're running through players at the moment, so it was a good opportunity to segue into Chase. I also want to talk quickly about Seeds, because Seeds has been a bit of a bugbear of mine this season, because he does get a lot of the ball, 22 disposals again, so not as much output, 10 and 12. You can see from his tracker there, everything pretty much on the wing. But as we pointed out, with Mr. Seedsman, didn't use it all that well, Macca.
No, it's some very disappointing. I think it was the last quarter. There was 2 or 3 really, really bad. As somebody's put up there, brain farts. He changed the momentum in the second quarter with a brain fart. I thought he did the same in the last quarter as well. So look, Seed does waste a lot of his disposals, but I'll tell you what, when he's on and he gains an enormous amount of ground, and if he's close enough, he can kick a nice goal. And with his ability, he should be able to put it to advantage 99% of the time, unless he's under real pressure, because he has got a very good kick on him. So, I thought he was very poor in that area today at times, and it was costly too at times. So, I didn't rate his game today.
Well, Tim was talking earlier about shuffling the team around to accommodate DMAC, and I thought actually this week Paul Seedsman was the biggest loss as a consequence of reshuffling. Yep. Biggest victim, because Seed was pushed a little bit further forward to accommodate DMAC on the wing, and I just didn't think it worked. And the stats show that. I mean, Seed has been averaging around about the $700 or $780. Oh my God, 700 to 800 metres gained over the last 2-3 weeks. He got us 388 this week, and he was obviously charged with the responsibility of trying to find forward 50 targets, and he failed miserably because it's just not his go. It's not his go.
He strikes me as I think we have a few players in the team that are like this, that have one role that they can play, and they can play that to a pretty good standard, and they do their thing. With Seed, it's outside handball receives, kick it long, try and get it to the advantage of other players further up the field, but they're not a super dynamic player. They don't have a second thing they can do. It's you put them in the team to do their thing, they do that, and that's it. Whereas a player like, I don't know, we've seen that Rory Sloane, for example, when he was in his peak form, could play in the middle, he could play on the wing, he could play up forward, which I don't think applies to Paul Seedsman. And Paul Seedsman, he can be a fine player, he can be very valuable to the team, but you can't put him in a role that he's not used to because he'll just fail.
Yeah, the thing that pointed to Seeds being charged with the responsibility of hitting up targets is the couple of times he didn't pull the trigger from around 50 and try to hit up targets, whereas normally he would be shooting on goal. And to me, in his mind, it was, I've got to find a target. And, Al Clarkson is the best proponent going around of playing players to their strengths. He won flags by playing role players to their strengths, and I think this is what we've got to do with those sorts of players, Scorpus, that you're talking about. And Seed is definitely one of those, where he's a transition player. He's best played as the first feed out of the defensive 50. He's not someone that's going to hit you up targets. He's the one that's going to get you field position. And if we're trying to turn him into that link player that Tommy Lynch sometimes is, I don't think he's the right player for that.
I found it weird as well that we've spent some time throughout this year playing players to their strengths. We've absolutely done that with a bunch of players, including Seedsman earlier in the year. But then other players, we seem to just decide randomly, hey, this week we're not playing you to your strengths. You talked a lot on the cast about playing Foggerty as a midfielder instead of a forward. I know what we're trying to do there. Is that really playing to his strengths, though? I don't know.
No, of course it's not. Of course it's not. And we said earlier in the cast, Scorpus, Nick's bangs on about players being able to show their weapons. Billy Frampton, go back to the twos and he showed us his weapons. But as you say, Tom Diday's one at the moment that we're not allowing to show weapons. There's a couple of others, and Seedsman's today, the role that he was playing didn't allow us to, or didn't allow him, I think, to use his weapon. Brodie Smith, I've just got up on the screen at the moment, 22 disposals, 17 and 5 marks, playing a lot behind the ball at the moment, Brodie, with reasonable effect, 73% disposal efficiency. 17 uncontested possessions, 3 intercepts. Turn it over a bit though, 9 times. Only had the 3 score involvements as you'd expect coming out of the back half. 708 metres gained. He's another one. This is the knock-on effect, in my opinion, with playing Tom Diday the way we are at the moment, because Brodie Smith is being forced to play very deep, and I feel like we've got a double-barreled shotgun with Seedsman and Smith that we're just not utilising at the moment, and it all stems back down to how we're playing Tom Diday, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate? One thing I found interesting, and this is sort of related to what you're talking about with Smith having a lot of turnovers, and something I think you've mentioned in the cast a few times, that I've been on Big Footy going back at times and looking at some individual players that I've been interested in on Stats Pro. You can look at the little highlights, you can see all the involvements that players have. And one thing I found really interesting, and I hadn't found this out before, was that you can have an effective disposal that is a turnover. And the way champion data seems to determine a turnover can be like you kick the ball long to a contest and the player at the contest loses the contest. That's a turnover credited back to the kicker, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And I think some players like Brodie Smith can get burned in that stat when champion data is going, oh, you've kicked that long, you've gained 500 metres throughout the game, you're gaining 50 metres with each kick, but you're kicking to, Frampton on McGovern. And, that's an effective kick. You've kicked it to a long kick to a 1-on-1. That's effective according to them. But then Frampton turns it over. So I think some players get burned hard on that. I'm not sure whether Smith applies in this specific instance, but I thought that was maybe something interesting to bring up.
Yeah. I've noticed a few disparities with that stat. It often the disposal efficiency and effective disposals in general and turnovers often just don't marry up for whatever. They don't reconcile. So they're one of those things you take with a little bit of a pinch of salt, and often it's the eye test that tells you the story. And I felt Smith was relatively effective in his role today. I just think as a team at the moment, we're competitive for periods of time, but it's a very demanding game style that we're playing, and particularly when we're playing an undersized defence, Mac, the midfielders are being asked to do a heck of a lot.
Oh, you talking to me?
Yeah, that's Mac. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think we went through that before. Particularly, we were, with the one guy short and Duday being outsized by his opponent, and really made what could have been an asset into a struggling almost liability. And whereas if we'd picked the right type of guy, right size guy, to stand darling, and Duday being allowed to use the assets that he does have, it would have been a lot better for us. And I think, but who knows what their motive is in doing it that way. But they've really murdered Duday in the last two matches he's been used, inadvertently, I think. So anyhow,
sacrifice him would be what I would say, Mac. Sacrificed him for a reason that isn't necessarily clear, but there has to be a reason that's consistent.
I hope they don't keep doing this every week.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Now, Harry Schoenberg I've got up on the screen at the moment. I thought actually Harry continues to make small steps in improvement. Had 21 disposals today, 12 kicks and 9 handballs, took 5 marks, laid a tackle and kicked 1 goal too. If you have a look at his disposal graph on the screen there, it was probably Harry's most consistent game in terms of staying in the game and getting touches for the majority of the game. He didn't have too many quiet periods. He got a little bit more time on ball, I felt. Played a lot of the time, as you can see there, with his tracker in the forward half, 86% in the forward half. But he's progressing nicely, in my opinion.
It's interesting. I just wonder how many games Harry's actually played now. He hasn't played all that many, and I think he's coming along really nicely. About 15, 99, he says. Well, for a 15-game player, he's a very calm player, as mentioned in the chat. And he doesn't panic. He tries to use the ball, and sometimes he just glides through. I just think this guy at least is going to be a part of our midfield patch for the next 10, 15 years. Not 15, maybe 10 to 12 years, and be a 200-game player, because he's got the attributes. He can use the ball very well, and he reads it very well, and he doesn't panic. And I think the more football he plays, the more positions he'll get. He's just got that ability to read it and be in the right place. So I have big hopes for him. Big hopes.
He's one of the few players that players that we have available that seems able to play multiple midfield roles, which is so valuable for us when we've got players like Keys in the side, for example. I was always super impressed with how he can win clearances if he needs to play that role. He wasn't really playing that role this week, but alternatively, he can win ground balls just outside the contest, which a lot of our players really struggle with. If the ball gets spilled out that little bit, Harry gets into really good positions. And he had quite a number of contested possessions this week. His rate for that was up where you'd want it to be for a player of his type. So dynamic players like Schoenberg are going to be vital for our rebuild as we need to phase out players like Sloan as they age, and maybe who knows what happens to Matt Crouch in the future. We need these players around.
You mentioned Sloan there and Scorpus, and it's interesting that I think he's struggling a little bit at the moment, and he's still got another 2 to 3 years on his contract, hasn't he? So I just wonder how the end is going to come for him.
His role is going to have to change, Macca. He is not going to be able to play an inside mid role or an inside out role much longer. I see him tailing off his career across half forward. he's not going to remain in that role. The main reason we're playing him in that role right now is because we don't have the cattle. But you get another 50 games into Keys and Shuey, and get Luke Pedler on the park, and Sam Berry a few more games into him, and I think you'll see Sam Berry and Sloaney swap roles as their respective careers move forward. The only thing that I'll say about Shuey is that it was probably his most wasteful in terms of stats. He had, as I mentioned, the 21 kicks, but only 8 effective disposals according to the stats there. So turn it over 9 times. Now, that's quite interesting given the amount of ball he got forward of the centre. So that might be something that you're referring to, Scorpus, with regards to how those... or how disposal efficiency or effective disposals are actually counted.
Possibly. It's always hard to say, because obviously there are times as well where a player can just stuff it up big time. And yeah, he's one of those players that, is going to grow into, he's going to get those turnovers out of his game. He's a very young player. And what I've been super happy with him in that sort of forward half role is that he is actually able to get the ball there. As opposed to the multitude of players that we've played over the years that have got like 8 touches a game. That doesn't seem to be what Schoenberg's doing. And I would live with 9 turnovers, however many you just said, if he can still actually get 20 touches as opposed to 6 or 8.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Good point.
The thing that I like about Shuey, and I've always liked about him, is his composure in tight and his ability to be creative with his disposal. Generally, he'll put a teammate into an advantage position, or he'll bring a teammate into play, and that's, he's got a long way to go in terms of building body strength, I think, and endurance. But once he gets a tank and a little bit more of a harder body, he's going to be Darren Jarman-esque at times, I believe, in terms of his ability to distribute the ball. He seems to have that extra second. Now, anyone else you want to look at, Macca, before we tidy this up?
No, not particularly, mate. I'm struggling a bit, so I'm happy to wind up anyhow.
Yeah, I know you're struggling a bit, mate, so we won't go too much longer. Just from you then, mate. Now, if anyone is on the in the live audience and they want to have a say, you've probably got about 5 or 10 minutes, so stick up your virtual hand and I'll get you on before we finish up.
One of the chat members mentioned Rowie. We should give Rowie a mention, I think.
What do you think about him?
I thought Rowie... I thought that was probably one of the best games he's played for us, actually. I thought he moved around quite. He didn't just stay in his forward pocket. He moved quite around the ground quite well in that forward line. He was sometimes getting the ball on the wing, and I thought he used the ball pretty well. And to me, that was possibly his best game of the club.
How'd you see it, Tim?
He's a very interesting player in that, obviously, you've talked many times in the past about how sometimes he just doesn't play a very good game at all, and other times he manages to kick a few goals. So the fact that he's been able to get away from Adelaide Oval and contribute and not just be a total passenger or traffic cone on the field is definitely very positive. I do wonder how much more development he has in him. The thing that concerns me a lot about Rowe is that he has no speed. There were some chases that we saw on the wing, and while he did get a lot of disposals, so that was a really positive thing. If he's playing on a faster, agile defender like a small forward would often play on, he was quite often second to the ball in those sort of loose ball gets or whatever they're called these days. Yeah. So, I think whether he's a long-term option I'm not sure at this point, but he's contributing for now. We don't really have options that are better at the moment. I'd love to see Newchurch at some point, but he's not ready in my opinion. So, I guess that's my opinion on Rowe for now. But I liked his game. I thought it was good.
Yeah. I like the fact that he got up the ground a bit. Like you, I'm concerned about his lack of pace, and he still seems to be carrying a little bit of puppy fat. I don't like the way there are a couple of times where he collapsed at the knees looking for a free. I don't like it. It cost us a goal in I think it was the third quarter where he should have been looking to give off a little handball, and instead he was dropping at the knees trying to get a free. That's something that is a carryover from his SANFL games. He's just got to get that out of his game. Like you, Scorpus, I don't know whether he's a long-term proposition. I think he's, again, this is, if we want to go by Nix's mantra, his weapon is his ability to kick goals and to crumb packs. So, eventually we're going to have to use that. Obviously, we played him more in a Lockie Murphy role this week because we simply had to. But in the longer term, if he's going to make it as a small forward in the Stephen Mill role, then he needs to show that weapon more. And at the moment, we're probably not getting enough value on the scoreboard from Jimmy, but you can probably excuse it this week. I was really pleased, though, that he was able to put 4 quarters together, as you said, Tim, away from home. That was a positive.
The issue with him playing like a crumbing role, for example, I mean, you just have to look at our forward line. How does he get any space? When you see a player like Stephen Milne dominate, he was roving to a player like Nick Rewalt. So, in a lot of space in a dominant team with excellent inside 50 entries. We're currently dealing with, last week, for example, kicking to 4 tall forwards all in 1 meter away from each other. And this week there was a bit of that, less of that, thankfully. But it's going to take Phil Thorpe becoming an absolute superstar, which is definitely on the way to being, for him to get that space and separation to do those crumbs and snaps that we want to see from him. But now he's just running around with like 20 defenders on him. So that'll come, hopefully.
It will. 5 minutes left, I reckon, guys, before we tidy up. So if you do have something you want to say, stick your hand up now. We'll forever hold your peace. Now, Scorpers, we usually round out our little player analysis by each picking one person we feel is under the pump. Macca, considering you're just about ready to fall off your chair, who do you reckon?
Well, I think, what's his name, the blonde-haired creature, the Frampton.
Frampton, he only just got
I just don't... Yeah, look, I just didn't think he performed very, very well, really. We just don't have that ability to clunk those marks. We look so much better when we've got Thilthorpe in the goal square, and it's a pity that we have to have somebody for a second ruck in there, because otherwise I don't think we need another tall in there at all. I like the mix that we had in there. It was pretty good today, I thought, apart from the fact that Frampton, he just doesn't do enough. And somebody says he's fucking useless, and that's how I see him. And I don't rate him at all.
There was a lot of people, including you, Scorpus, who are not a Himmelberg fan at all. But I still maintain that of the two of them, Himmelberg offers a lot more than Frampton. I was really disappointed that they dropped Himmelberg.
Yeah, I mean, Himmelberg, for me, my issue, I've said before, on Big Footy mostly, is that he's a 200-centimetre player that struggles to mark. I mean, that is a big... That's an issue for becoming an AFL standard player. But Frampton is a 200-centimetre player that doesn't get near the ball. So, I mean, you can't mark when you can't actually get anywhere near it. So, I agree that Himmelberg is... I thought he was... I don't know whether he was stiff, but his stiff to be dropped for Frampton specifically. That's a real stinger.
I really thought he was stiff. Because I thought...
that was good.
Well, I thought, considering the conditions last week against Port, I actually thought Himmelberg did quite well at ground level, and I thought he ran to good positions. It would have been great if he held a couple of marks, absolutely. But I just feel like he plays to the structure a little bit better than Frampton. Frampton seems to be all chaos and arms and legs and all that sort of stuff, whereas Himmelberg will run to where he needs to be, and the issue is not that he doesn't get to enough balls. It's just that he doesn't hold them at this stage. Although people forget second half of last year he was holding them all right. So I was really disappointed that they only gave him 2 games, and I felt like we gained nothing from Frampton. Frampton got towed up in the ruck as well, so my pick in terms of who's under the pump, and it kind of marries into what we're just talking about, is Riley O'Brien. I think Riley O'Brien needs a kick up the arse, to be honest with you. And I wouldn't be averse to actually playing Frampton and Himmelberg, with one of them being the first ruck, and asking Riley just to go back and find out how to be a ruckman in the SANFL.
I think that's pretty extreme, I think. I would say that we would get slaughtered all day in ruck.
You pick your game, Macca. Pick your game. Elliot Himmelberg is a very good ruckman. So he would more than hold his own against probably 2/3 of the rucks in the competition. Who we got next week?
Melbourne.
So maybe not against Gorn. Maybe not against Gorn.
My issue with dropping O'Brien is that whenever we have a losing ruck in the team, we have no idea how to play to him. Our entire midfield structure is almost always set up to play to a ruck that can tap it to our advantage, or at least attempt that. So when we chuck in someone like Himmelberg, who I agree isn't that bad in the ruck, Frampton's not terrible either, but they're not going to win as many taps up against most rucks. So that would require us to change our midfield structures and relearn how to play to a losing ruck, which I think would be a very big challenge with the current midfield that we have. I agree, O'Brien is playing like shit, but I mean, I feel it's mostly his around the groundwork. He's just not getting involved. That was his big 100%. Strength in his... Yeah, that was his big strength in his BNF year. He's not marking it. Again, he's a 200 centimetre player that is taking, 1 or 2 marks a game? He used to float back into defence, take those very important intercept marks, get involved around the ground. He'd be a link. He's not a great kick, but we used to use him as a link player, sort of like we did with Sauce. But now he's getting, a couple of good disposals a match, and that's it. How many hitouts did you have this match? 15, I think.
15 hitouts. He got, and a lot of them were in a patch, sort of second half. He only had 8 hitouts to the middle of the third quarter. So that's a fair spanking. To only have 8 hitouts against Nat Newey until halfway through the third quarter, and then whether Nat Newey went off for a little while or whatever, but he got in the space of the next half of that quarter, he got up to 14. So he had 6 hitouts in the space of half a quarter, and then only 1 in the last. So apart from that little burst in the second half of the third quarter, he was ineffective.
Yeah, and if he had 15 hitouts, Nick Naitanui had 14 hitouts to advantage. So exactly that. 6 for O'Brien and 3 for Williams, 1 for Frampton. So that's Bailey Williams from West Coast.
Yeah, Scoot Malouk on the YouTube chat. Thanks for joining us, mate. He wonders whether Rob's injured. If he's injured, can we stop playing injured players, for God's sake? If he's injured, just rest him. We've got Strawn in the 2s, play him. I mean, that's what he's there for. If you're not going to use him, why have him on the list? I was surprised that we signed Strawn, but I assumed it was to cover for O'Brien. So if O'Brien's carrying something, give Strawn a week or 2. It doesn't make any sense.
Unless we think he's worse than an injured O'Brien, which would be a real indictment on him as a player, I guess. So let's hope that's not the case.
Well, it'd be an indictment on our bloody list managers, wouldn't it?
Yep.
Because we signed Strawn, we didn't have to. Everyone thought he was going to get delisted. The last player, just before we finish up, I just would enjoy everyone's thoughts on Darcy Foggerty being given the keys to the city up forward. Started off with a bang.
Well, he looked like a millionaire early, and he ended up a bit of a pauper at the end. In the first quarter, I thought he was just going to take the game apart. Unfortunately, he did miss a couple of shots for goal that he would normally kick, and he I think he liked it a lot better in the sense of having a bit of area to move around in, and he was throwing his weight around quite a bit. I don't know whether it's lack of fitness that he can't maintain that for a whole game. He had a little burst again a little bit later in the game, but he was good without being great, as it's been said in the chat, and I still think he can't sustain it for a long period of time, and I still think there is a fitness issue with the guy. But I think he plays a lot better without Tex Walker in the side.
What do you think, Scorpus?
Well, first I should probably say I'm a bit of a Darcy Foggerty fan, so you're probably not going to get me coming on here and slagging him off. I think with Fog, you can clearly see that he is an AFL capable player. He's a very high impact player. So whenever he gets the ball, something just seems to happen. And I really hated when people used to say this about a player like Cyril Rioli, because I always felt that can tend to excuse a player's low output by people saying, oh, well, he kicked a miraculous goal, but then he did stuff all else for the rest of the game. So I think there's a balancing act between having Fog be that sort of player and having him be not effective at all. So, yeah, I think we need to be persisting with him for as long as we possibly can, because we need to see by the end of this year whether he is a future player for us. So that means we need to play him in his preferred position to show his weapon, as Nix would say. So play him in the forward line. Yep. And by the end of the year, given he's out of contract, we'll then have a really good assessment, because he'll be in the team for more than just 4 or 5 weeks at a time. Yep. We need to give him some time with Walker out, with not playing like 20 billion forwards, tall forwards up there. We need to give him this chance. So I think he showed just enough. If I was going to say what is the minimum level that he needed to show to, keep that, give him another ticket to play next week, I think he just did that. But obviously going missing for 2 quarters in the middle is not amazing.
Well, it did look like he had a hip or a groin injury or some sort of issue that he went off for a little while. But I felt it was quite interesting looking at the stats that our resurgent period, or the period where we looked like we were most matching West Coast, which was from halfway through the second until probably towards the end of the third, coincided with Darcy Foggerty completely going missing. So whether that's indicative of ball movement, or whether that's indicative of Darcy's running patterns or leading patterns, or what, I'm not sure. I would have to go back and watch that period of the game, but I just find it a little fascinating that he went blank during the very period that we looked most up and about. And I'm with you, Scorpus. I've been crying out for probably 2 years on this podcast to give Darcy the forward 50. And, he's terribly unlucky from that sense that Tex has had a bit of a resurgence, although that seems to have petered out. But I have a feeling that we'll see Tex in for Darcy next week, and I think it's a real shame, because I'm the same as you. He's an AFL quality player. We just have to use him the right way, and him and Tilthorpe up forward seems like a pretty good basis for a forward line if we would just persevere.
I think, Nix was quite positive on Foggerty in his presser, so he mentioned him without a prompt, so no journo asked him a question about it. So that's a positive, and I think Nix tends to be fairly honest in his assessment of plays. I think he mentioned a player like Jones as well out of the blue, which is always good, because that tends to indicate they're less likely to be dropped the following week. But then you have a difficult situation. You bring back Tex, which Nick said is going to happen. Do you drop Frampton and play Thilthorpe in the ruck, or are we playing all 4 of them again and dropping O'Connor, which would suck because O'Connor, you don't want to drop him after 1 game. That's going to be another, do we compromise the structure situation? So I hope they make the right call there. I'd personally drop Frampton and just Thilthorpe can play in the ruck for 5 minutes and call that a day.
I agree. Mm.
Well, I think Thilthorpe's been in the side long enough now. O'Brien generally only takes a couple of minutes. We may not even get a bloody centre ruck contest in that time. So I'd be quite happy to see Thilthorpe, play the backup role. Unless Himmelberg or Frampton really offer us something at AFL level. I just think that's why I would have liked to have seen Himmelberg get a better run, because I actually think the question's been answered with Frampton. It doesn't matter what he does in the SANFL. The question at AFL level has been answered across 2 clubs and multiple seasons. That Frampton is not. He's not an AFL player. Not an AFL player. Himmelberg, I would say the question is 90% answered, but I would have liked to have seen him just get a stretch of 4 or 5 games, because I do think he's a little bit of a confidence player, and when he's playing well, I think he offers more than Frampton. But if you're gonna draw a line through those 2, then draw a line through them, put them on the trade table, do whatever, get rid of them, persevere with your number 1 draft pick and your bullocking Tex clone. Play them in position, and as we keep saying, allow them to show their weapons. Peter J also made a really good point on Tuesday night last week, and I reckon he'll probably mention it again. Thilthorpe's an interesting one, because he is not Ben King or Max King. He is not a stay-home, big, tall timber. He has got pace, he can get separation, he's got massive endurance. And I would actually like to see... They seem to play Riley fairly deep this week, and I would actually like to see the roles reversed. I would like to see Thilthorpe played up the ground, and I think we need to be using him like Nick Revolt. Can you imagine a 200-centimetre Nick Revolt running around, just burning his opponent off just with endurance, and then having Foggerty running out of the square? To me, that's the setup.
Well, They originally started off that way, I think, that they had Thilthorpe a little bit higher up the ground and Foggerty coming out of the square, and that's when Foggerty was going very well. And then they eventually moved Thilthorpe into the square and Foggerty out the centre half forward. So
and Frampton.
I'm in the same camp. I'm in the same camp as you. I like the structure as it was when Thilthorpe was roaming around with Foggerty coming out of the goal square.
Yeah. Look, whatever the setup was, and there's a bit of debate in the chat, I think that Foggerty is best out of the square, and I think that Thilthorpe can rubber band it between centre half forward and full forward, depending on the game flow. But I think his worth is going to be his endurance and his ability at ground level. So I certainly hope we don't play him as a big tall tree in the forward 30 and just keep bombing it on his head, because again we'll just be setting him up to fail, and again we won't be allowing him to show us his weapon. His weapon is his endurance, his strength, and his ability to burn off his opponent. So I hope we see a little bit more of that. Last one. Sorry, go on, Tim.
I'll just say that if we do need if we're playing Thilthorpe and Foggerty and we need a third forward, I still want to see Mackesy. I still want to give him a little bit more of a taste up there. I know he's been playing defence, obviously, for the Sandful, but I still think he has something that could potentially work up there. But, of course, depends on the squad makeup. Obviously, Walker's going to come back, but that's also another option that we have up our sleeves at some point if we need it, in my opinion, at least. Yeah.
Well, we showed when we shifted Murray up forward when he last played that had some effect. I think either Murray or Mackesy could possibly be a bit of a swingman type, depending on the structure and how the games are going, a bit of a shock value. And I don't mind it, Scorpus. I think we need to know with Mackesy. 1990 says that Mackesy isn't a forward's arsehole. Well, he played quite a bit forward in his juniors, so I wouldn't write him off in that regard. And a couple of times he has played cameos up forward. He's looked all right for us, in my opinion. So I think we need to know that one. Last one, both of you. O'Connor, a fairly quiet start, but not disgraced. Happy to keep him in.
Yeah, 8 disposals, 8 tackles. First game, I think Scorpus said it before, I'd be very disappointed if he never got given another chance. I actually think he should be given at least 3 chances and see what that brings. Because for a first game, it wasn't too bad.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't been the biggest fan of O'Connor, and I've argued with Phoenix about this a little bit on Big Footy. While I don't necessarily based on what I've seen at the low level, think is necessarily a long-term option for us. You can't bring a player in and drop them. You can't do the Ben Davis treatment where you bring them to Geelong to play at that
100%.
potato of a stadium
Okay.
and then just say, oh, well, you didn't really get involved that much, so we're not going to play you for another year. The issue I had was he only played 56% time on ground. Now, whether that's an issue or not, doesn't really matter. But if a player is only playing 56% time on ground, does that mean that they're going to get dropped because they weren't, fit enough to play the whole game or something? That concerns me. That I don't like when you look at a player's played basically the whole game, but has got that sort of time on ground. That is potentially flagging a dropping, which would be no good. But I do want to see what he has. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, he needs some more, I think. Well, he's been on our list long enough now. We need to know. He's another one that we just need to know. And the only way we're going to find out is to play him and play him in the role that we recruited him for, which thankfully we did today. We didn't hide him away in a pocket. We played him in the middle, which was good. And, a tough midfield to get started with, the West Coast midfield. But I felt, in some respects he held his own. He was in and under 8 tackles, as you said, Matt. Needed to probably get more disposals, but hopefully that'll come over the next month if he gets the opportunity.
Yeah, the weird thing with him is I noticed he was playing like a very, very defensive role. Like his role was in the centre bounce. You just stand there, block his opponent, which is very similar to what Foggerty and Haitley were doing. And when they were in those roles, they too did not get very many possessions. So that's a bit promising in that you can look and say, well, he had 8 disposals, but if he has 8 disposals playing this weird blocker role, not a tag, but like just a block, then maybe he has played his role. Maybe that's what we brought him in for. He did his role. We're happy. I don't know.
It's quite possible, mate. Selection's hard to work out at the moment, and I still don't think we've got our centre set up right and our stoppage set. So the amount of times that West Coast flicked it out the back to 2 or 3 unmanned bloody teammates and just clear the ball away from a stoppage is driving me crazy. But anyway, look, the best thing about tonight, apart from having you on board, Scorpus, is the fact that we've got at the moment 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 people in our little studio audience there, which is excellent. People can listen while they're in there, which is great. It's good to have you around, mate. Did you want to give your little puny YouTube channel a bit of a plug before we sign off?
You can go check out Horror Unbox if you want to. I don't come on to plug my stuff or anything. I enjoy talking about footy. I'll keep all that YouTube stuff a bit separate, but maybe my voice is familiar for some people. Although I did do this cast a while back, so maybe there's still some people lingering on from that remember the preview show. But maybe I'll come on from time to time when I have a bit of time.
If I've seemed a bit distracted, it's because I've been madly trying to find the Game of Crows music, but I couldn't find it, so never mind. But if you come on again, I'll try and dig it up. Look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord. It's been a great chat tonight, as it was on the Game Day chat. If you're listening on demand, make sure you get around us on Game Day. It's a really good place to be on our Discord server on Game Day. Lots of good comments, and it certainly makes watching the games more lively. If you want to get around us and give us a couple of bucks, go to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. You'll notice, people, that I put a suggestion box channel in. If you've got some suggestions for the podcast or for some of the other content that we do, or just if you want me to get rid of something like Macca's bloody beloved 15 minutes of fame weekend results, chuck a suggestion in the suggestion box. And if you'd listen to iTunes, give us a review. No, I'm just jealous, mate. I'm jealous. That's what it is. It's just the green-eyed monster. That's all it is. All it is.
I mean,
I just
wish I was you. Show you're talking about, actually, Jesus.
I just wish I was you.
not at the moment. You wouldn't want to be.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Macca. Thanks, everybody, for coming on board, and we'll see you on Tuesday night at 8:30 with Peter J for Tuesday Night Live. Until then, good night.
Yeah, good night, all.
See you later.